So I've essentially just introduced Ian, but for those who are watching this as a recording, welcome to Ian Manzie. Ian is, as his Zoom name suggests, is a Senior International Trade Advisor for the Department for International Trade, which is the UK government department that works with businesses based in the UK to help with their transition to global markets. Ian has a focus in education and working with small and medium enterprises. He has worked for many, many years in the education sector for the department, particularly in the London region. So as I said, today we'll be hearing from Ian about how you as a small tutoring business owner can scale your business and make use of the Department for International Trade's resources and expertise, and also a little bit about what it really means to go global. So Ian, you have the floor for the next hour, and thank you very, very much for joining us.
Can you see my presentation okay there, Ludo?
Yes, I can see that. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome everybody to my presentation. In terms of how long it's going to take and everything else, I know it's a bit of a before lunchtime slot, and if you've got the same sort of metabolism as me, it can make you a little bit niggly. I'm gonna be my presentation will probably take about half an hour, and I'll leave a lot of time for questions and answers afterwards. Okay, and it's probably best if you leave them to the end. But if anything comes up halfway through, I'm sure Ludo can bring it up and yeah, interrupt me. So my presentation is entitled "How to Take Your Tutoring Business Global," and to be frank, it's going to be a bit of an overview of our department as a whole, and also my experience with dealing with companies in the education sector and companies in the tutoring sector, obviously. So my name's Ian Manzie. I'm a Senior International Trade Advisor, and I've been working for the Department for International Trade since 2013. My background is actually in really working in the private sector in sales and marketing. I used to work for Thomson Reuters, and in those roles, my last roles were looking after the Reuters Ireland, Thomson Reuters Ireland. So I helped for the merger of Thomson and Reuters in Ireland. And I also managed a sales and marketing team across Northern Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Israel, which probably tells you a lot about the state that Reuters was in at the time. But in terms of my role at DIT, I actually lead on education in London, and I manage the business services team across London and the Southeast. And I'll explain a bit more about the setup of the department in a minute. But that means that we've got international trade advisors who are here to help UK businesses in London and Southeast. And it is specifically UK businesses. So a little bit more about the department. There's been a government department helping British companies to export and foreign companies to set up in the UK since the 18th century. There was something called the Board of Trade, and there have been different iterations. If people are a bit older on the call, they might remember something called UK Trade and Investment, which was what the name was called until 2016. But in 2016, we renamed ourselves the Department for International Trade. And the reason for that was because of the Brexit referendum. We actually became a full ministerial department, which was made up of 4 different divisions. So there was a trade policy group, which was set up because that previously wasn't required because we were members of the EU. There was a new marketing department, which was set up, which was about making people aware of our services, because sometimes it's thought that we hide our light under a bushel. There's always been a department that helps UK companies to ensure that they finance any deals that they've got going abroad. And that's not just in products, that's in services as well. and they're called UK Export Finance. But there used to be something called the Export Credit Guarantee Department, which was in place previously, and that was set up in 1916. So this support from government for business in doing business abroad is not something new. It's been around for a while. And then there's the fourth part of the department, which is really international trade and investment. And that's where I work. And that's, I'll go into a little bit more detail about that now. So our role is to support UK companies to grow through their business through international trade. And we work with all sorts of companies, from sole traders through to large multinationals. We're also here to try and establish business abroad in terms of sectors and make sure that we connect them to all the large commercial opportunities that happen abroad. So, for example, on the infrastructure side, we're often trying to tie in large parts of British industry, maybe in terms of construction, in terms of training, in terms of engineering, to ensure that large projects are won by UK PLC. And we're also trying to make sure that foreign investors want to invest in the UK. Now, that could be a sovereign wealth fund wanting to come over here and make investments in the city. It could be a company deciding to release their shares on the London Stock Exchange, or it could be as basic as someone deciding to set up an office in the UK. And as a whole, we're always trying to network. We're trying to make sure that we get out there, raise the profile of the UK, and ensure that people realize it's a great place to do business and that we've got products and services that people want overseas. So essentially, we're trying to increase exports and investment and help the British balance of payments. So I work on specifically the trade side. So my role is helping UK companies that are based in London with their international strategy. So I'm one of the international trade advisors. In my team in London, we've got 4 international trade advisors. And in Southeast, we've got 4 international trade advisors who help British companies with their strategy in the business services space. And what we do is, first of all, we do due diligence and we make sure that the company should be helped. And then we try and understand exactly what the business strategy of the client is and whether they should be trying to look overseas, because not every client has got the right product or service to do that. And then we try to introduce them to a few ideas that might help with their strategy, introduce them to our network, give them information about the things that might be useful for them in terms of their go-to-market strategy and other services that are available from the department, and generally act as a wall to bounce ideas off. Because it's very lonely if you're an SME. If you're an entrepreneur, you're often working very long hours. You're trying to do something new that's exciting, but you're doing it in a very focused manner. And it's quite good to have a little bit of time out to bounce your ideas off of someone else. And that's one of the strengths of this role and one of the most enjoyable parts of it in lots of respects. By the way, we're heavily targeted by the department. And the way we're targeted is that we are required to deliver a certain amount of export wins every year. So if we help a client to get a contract overseas and the client's willing to say that we've been helping them with that, they declare that contract, and we have to do a certain amount of wins every year and a certain volume in terms of sterling, effectively, in terms of money. So we're very, very heavily targeted. Now, you'll notice I mentioned that I'm quite experienced. A lot of the people that do this job, 90% of them, probably 98% of them, are from the private sector. And we've got 12 UK regions, including the devolved administrations in Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. And in most of those regional teams, we try and sort things out in sectors. and utilize the experience that we have. There's quite a lot of grey hair within the team, and particularly on my head at the moment. In terms of the second part of the organisation, we've got a ministerial department based in Whitehall, which has different sector teams. And the sector team that looks after education is called DIT Education. And what they're doing is they're getting close to the main players in the market. They work closely with the Department of Education, and they're also deciding what events we should do. So they would work closely with the likes of the British Educational Suppliers Association to ensure that we're represented at BET, the British Educational Technology Trade Show, and foreign versions like GESS, and lots of other different trade shows and events. So they're trying to work out what we should be helping clients with. And in some cases, I'll touch on it later, they're providing funding which is available for people to help with their strategy overseas. Then the third part of the department is the most important part. It's what I would call the crown jewels. We've got 160 offices in 108 countries around the world. And in those offices are based commercial officers who are like Britain's industry's boots on the ground to help them. And you can approach them free of charge to get advice. Now, we may not always have an education sector lead in every country. And the reason is because, you know, we've got certain resources and we have to work out which countries are priority in terms of their education sector. But a lot of the key countries that people are targeting at the moment, so for example, China, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, we often have people on the ground who are there to help British companies. You can arrange a call with them. They do things like they work very closely building their networks in country. In the old days, they would have been mainly career civil servants from the UK mixed in with local civil servants recruited locally who understand the culture, speak the language, and understand the business environment in that country. Nowadays, we also use occasionally private sector providers. So, for example, in China, we use China-Britain Business Council, and we use a lot of chambers of commerce. So a lot of the education stuff in Singapore is dealt with by the Chamber of Commerce over there. But there's nearly always someone that will have a chat with you free of charge about doing business in that country. And I'll talk later about something more sophisticated that they can do for you, which is chargeable but heavily subsidized. So that's an overview of the department. So why would you want to export? I mean, it might seem like a stupid question, but a lot of small companies in the education space find that they start exporting organically. So what happens is you're a tutoring company, you're doing some business to high net worth individuals within London, and then you start suddenly realize you're doing a lot with a few Russian families, and they introduce you to Russian families abroad in different countries. And therefore, you have to start thinking about, how am I going to deliver? How am I going to do the payments? What's going to happen with regards to it? So a lot of people start doing it organically, but actually, it would be good if they've actually thought about it to start off with, why they wanted to export in the first place, because there are a lot of benefits in exporting. First of all, obviously there's a financial benefit. Sometimes you can get higher margins delivering services abroad, and it's an easy way to make more money, although it will involve a lot of hard work, and you know, you have to get your systems in place, which I'll talk about later. But it's a very good way of ensuring that you have more revenue and more profits. The other thing is it achieves levels of growth that you might not be able to get within the UK. So, for example, if you can do something that is delivering one-to-many overseas, or if you're managing to go to a country that has a real demand for English tutoring, for example, maybe people in Hong Kong that want to come over to the UK, because of the new rules and the new visas, then you might find that you're going to get more capacity quickly in one manner than you would do in the UK. The other thing is, sometimes the economy in the UK might be going down whilst the economy in another country might be going up. So it's about balancing your flexibility. And you can often charge different services, charge for different services in different ways overseas. People might want to have a different type of service, which is easy for you to provide. For example, they might want short training sessions of 20 minutes and be willing to pay for that on a subscription basis. Whereas in the UK, it might be a bit more onerous in the way that you're delivering things. So there is a lot of reasons why you might want to export. And one of the key reasons is something that people don't think about. If you're a tutoring company employing lots and lots of different tutors, trying to keep them on board with you and ensure that they're part of your culture can be massively enhanced by doing training overseas. It's far more interesting for them. It might well fit into different patterns with regards to the way that they deliver their services. So for example, they might find that if they're doing this as an add-on to their teaching, they can do this at times of the day because of the time difference overseas, which means that it's a really lucrative way of earning extra money for them that fits into their lifestyle, and that can really keep people on board with your company. So I'm just going to go through the first steps of how you might, if you haven't done any exporting whatsoever, how you might think about exporting and what you need to do. So for a tutoring company, for me, the first thing I would do would be working out whether I have got the tutors that would be able to deliver services abroad, whether the actual type of courses that I'm doing are courses that would work well abroad, and also whether the technology I'm using is good enough to work abroad. So for example, I worked with a company in London who I nurtured from a very early startup, who I was praying I'd be able to get an export win from, because they'd worked very diligently to ensure they'd got new technology on board, and had managed to start tutoring people. This was the early days, quite a few years ago. They started tutoring people virtually, and they'd done a fantastic job with it. And I thought, this is brilliant. We can start projecting them all over around the world, and hopefully they can win some business shortly. But they immediately realized that this would give them the opportunity to go to lots of remote schools in Kent that they hadn't been able to send out people face to face to, and they could make more money from it. And so unfortunately, one door shut for me, but for them, one door opened. So really, it's about what your company is, whether you feel that you're in the right position and you've got all the right skills to be able to do tutoring abroad. The other thing is it costs money, and especially if you're going to start doing things to your website, you're trying to get your social media up and running better, you're going to have to get some consultancy in to help you if you want to do it properly. And if you're attacking different countries like China, you might have to get a lot of expertise locally over there to make sure things work, and engage companies that could be quite expensive to make sure that you're going through all the different internet restrictions with regards to doing business over there. So what you need to do is you also need to research target markets, which can cost money. So work out exactly what sort of markets that you want to approach. And it might well be that you can do some work on your current user base in order to do that. You might find if you're working in London or Manchester or Edinburgh, training a certain type of client base, you might find that they have an extended network overseas, which could be a natural opener for you. So what you want to do is not only research your target markets, but research your own user base and work out where you might want to go. The other thing is you want to know what your routes to market are. In the old days, we used to send people face to face. People used to get paid, high net worth individuals would often pay a lot of money to have someone be a tutor for the whole of the summer in UAE, for example, or in London, but they've been sold to in UAE because the family is over here. Nowadays, obviously, routes to market in terms of trying to get that business, you might well be doing things in a slightly different manner. You might be using a partner. You might decide to get a partner overseas. You might be deciding to go via schools, international schools. You might want to target international schools that you know have got pupils that are coming back to the UK to try to get into independent schools. And you might want to go via their headmaster because you can add an additional service. And the other thing you need to do is consider how you're going to get paid. If you're doing things virtually, it might well be easier because you can have some sort of online payment system. But are you going to be getting paid in sterling? I would say that's the best way for you, because otherwise you're going to get into different ways of doing things. However, maybe you're targeting a specific market that doesn't want to pay you in sterling. And then you're going to have to start talking to your bank and think about different options. And then there are different legal obligations in different countries, and we can help you with these. So if you need some information about how to do business in a certain country and find out whether tutoring is legal in you know, whether you have to pay taxes, all those sorts of things, we can help you on that side of things. And we also know lots of accountants and lawyers in country who are there, who have done business with UK companies previously, and we can introduce you to them. And they can often give you a free first hour in terms of an overview of doing business overseas. So and then you need to plan your delivery model. I touched on the fact that in the old days, you might have people going face to face to do delivery. I say in the old days, it's happening nowadays. I've been hearing of people sending tutors out to families in UAE and Saudi Arabia for 3 months, for 75K for those 3 months to get paid, in terms of making sure they're ensconced in the family and ensuring that their children are not missing out on education because of COVID. So there are lots of different ways going forward. Obviously, delivery models can be online often nowadays, nearly always online. But you can decide whether you want to do one-to-many. You can decide whether you're going to be actually sending people overseas in terms of delivering services overseas. So there's lots of different routes of doing that. Ooh, I think I've just opened up a slightly different one. So we talked about how you might go about this, and I'm going to go into the planning side of things at the moment. But before I do that, I'd just like to talk a little bit about how things have changed in terms of tutoring. So when I first started looking after the education sector in 2013, most of the companies I was helping weren't doing things virtually. There were a few that had technology in place, but when it comes down to it, if you think of it in terms of timing, I don't know if you've heard of a company called VIP Kids. Well, VIP Kids was started at that time in 2013. They provide online English language lessons, mainly to children in China. And these are provided via fluent English-speaking teachers. They're now valued over $3 billion. But at that stage, when I was actually going out to companies, there was probably not as much opportunity for tutoring companies overseas as there is now. There have been a number of things that have come together to make it a perfect storm for this to be a very good time to start thinking about exporting overseas. So one of the things is there are so many different tutoring software packages out there that can help you personalize your tutoring. And you can even personalize it to the culture of the people you're going to be tutoring overseas. And it pays to do a bit of research to go out there and work out how you're going to deliver those services. It might be slightly different from the way that you deliver them in the UK. The other thing is COVID has made everybody realize that learning things virtually is like the new way of doing things. It's the new normal. So I wasn't going to say that. It's the new normal. But when it comes down to it, we're finding that lots of companies that were just doing things face to face had to pivot very quickly, and they are suddenly getting massive increases in their revenues because they're opening themselves up to so many new clients. And they can also sell themselves virtually as well, which is previously they might have to find an agent in country, or they might have to go to different international schools, or they might have to actually go out to market and do some business development. But nowadays they can actually pay someone to work out what their e-commerce site is like, and they can start taking money via that e-commerce site, and they can start booking stuff via their e-commerce site. So they can work out, if they've got enough tutors, they can actually start doing 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, if they've got the right sort of services. And for people that are doing things in maybe life skills tutoring or something slightly off-piste, they can maybe do it to one-to-many, because they're doing things that are actually really class-based and require a lot of interaction. The technology is there to do it properly nowadays, and they can make a lot more money doing it by doing it to lots of people in one country. So there are a lot of options that are available for tutoring companies. Sorry, you thought, why is he going on about the tutoring so much? The slide is missing, so my apologies about that on that side of things. So when it comes to a plan, the most important thing to start is with what you do as a company. Work out what your value proposition is, and work out whether you really think it's worthwhile investing your time and your money in developing an export strategy. If you think that is the case, you need to work out what you need to do that, whether you need new technology, whether you need new funding, how you're going to do it. Are you going to take on additional staff to do that? Have you got a tutor that you work with that would be fantastic at being your business development person? Is there someone else in your organization that's got a lot of skills that you can utilize? Or have you got a partner that you might be able to help get to help you? And there are lots of organizations out there that can help you. Obviously, there's the tutoring associations, and we've got lots of other organizations that are involved. But DIT Education is here to help you as well. So we're always trying to help British companies in the education sector space. The other thing is you need to work out what your margins are. You might want to have different charges overseas, and you might have to do some research into what the bottom line should be in terms of targeting foreign users. And how are you going to interact with those users? Are you going to have to do some more training for your tutors to make it easier for them? Are you going to have to do some cultural training? Are you going to have to do some research into doing to understanding what countries people in that country require in terms of teaching? And how are you going to reach them? You might find that you could do a very aggressive Google strategy and it will get you loads and loads of people on board. However, because of the type of high net worth individual you're trying to target, you might find that you want to go for a partner in country, or maybe utilize our department to do some sort of hospitality event where you advertise the fact that you're based in that country. So there's lots of different ways of doing things. And I would say the most important thing is working out which segment of children you're going to be targeting and which country. You might well understand what your business is in the UK. And if it's working in the UK, it probably will work overseas. And there could be a natural link to the countries you should be targeting. So the first thing I always do with people is have a chat with them about what their business is like at the moment, what are their strengths, and see if there are any ways that we can transfer those into an export strategy. A great example of that is I've got a client in North London that have been, because of been doing a lot of work with Chinese families in London, settling in London. As a result, they've found one of the Chinese families enjoyed their service so much that they wanted to see if they could start selling the service for them back in China. And after doing a bit of due diligence and some assistance from our people in China, they've now effectively using one of their former clients as an agent for themselves to deliver services in country. So be a little bit imaginative about it and try and work out what your existing network is, because often the strengths are within your organization and your network, and standing back as an entrepreneur and taking a little bit of time to work out what your strengths are and what your network is makes a massive difference. So I've talked about DIT. So what sort of practical advice do we provide? Well, I mentioned our commercial officers. As well as being there for you to talk to in country, they're also always going out trying to build their network in country. And therefore, they'll be in contact with schools and the Ministry of Education in country. And they'll often be posting export opportunities, which are opportunities for UK companies in the country that they're based. And so we have a website which is on our great.gov.uk website, which I'll show you later on, that posts these opportunities. And you can actually do a search on education opportunities, and you can set up an update on those so that you get an email once a week or something like that. The second thing that we do is, as well as having sort of free advice, in certain cases, we have clients that want us to do a project. So I'm just going to shut this door for a second. So sometimes we'll get clients approaching us that want us to do something more intense, which is going to take a bit of time and take more resource. And therefore, what we do in that case is we provide them with something called the Overseas Market Introduction Service. I'm going to give you an example of how this works. I had a company that provides courses in marketing, and they approached me a few years ago. And they approached me because they said, look, someone's hit us on our website. They were coming to London. We've had a meeting with them, and it was a brilliant meeting. It looks like a fantastic opportunity, but they're based in the Middle East. And to be frank, I've never done any business in the Middle East, and I'm a little bit scared. So I said, well, the first thing you need to do is realize how you're going to get paid, because getting paid in the Middle East, if you're not getting paid up front, it can take a while to get paid. Secondly, in the Middle East, people often will not respond to you, because if you get there by email, you need to get their mobile number. And the reason is because they've got lots of different fingers in different pies, and they often have other people working for them that will act as gatekeepers. And you really want to have a close relationship with them, because the other thing about the Middle East is you need to build relationships with people. And before COVID, often that would have to be face to face. So you probably need to get out there and meet potential clients. So I said, what I'll do is I'll introduce you to our commercial officer and see if she can help you a bit further. And our commercial officer said virtually the same things as I said with regards to getting paid and everything else. But she said, by the way, this client, it was in Bahrain, said this client is actually quite a large owner of different restaurants and hotels. So it's a really good opportunity for you. And if you were going to come over here to visit him, which I think you'd need to do if you're going to develop the opportunity further, because you need to show some commitment to the market, what we could do is maybe introduce you to similar companies. So they had a big chat about it. It started off with 8 companies, then it was 16. And then because they're a training company, they thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll arrange a seminar, okay? So they arranged a seminar with our commercial officer, and we invited 80 clients along to the seminar. 45 turned up, which is a brilliant hit rate. Part of the reason it's such a good hit rate is because the invite comes from Her Majesty's government. The second reason is because this particular event was being hosted in our embassy, apart from the fact it had to be moved at the last minute because our embassy was being rewired. So we had to move it into the ambassador's house and move his family out of the house. So a lot of people want to go to a big event like that, but also we targeted the right people. And it's a chargeable service. So what we did was we targeted them, we phoned them up to make sure they'd arrive. And in the Middle East, people are often lax about. They say they go to things, they don't always arrive. 45 out of 80 is fantastic. And that event was heavily subsidised by the government, cost about £6,000, which is pretty amazing for a service like that. I'd love to say that it all ended happily ever after, and that client they first chatted to has already delivered some business for them. But unfortunately, it takes a while to do business in the Middle East, and they've been working with them for 4 years. And every year or so, I phone them up and say, how's it going? And they go, oh, we're just talking about a contract, and it never happens. However, they got 2 companies that we introduced them to via the Overseas Market Introduction Service, not massive amounts of money, but enough amounts of money to give them money to have a business development strategy in the country. And they're doing other business in Bahrain now. So it's just a good idea of how you can use a specific service to help you. The other thing we do is we do trade missions. Trade missions are brilliant because what they do is they pull in a lot of buyers. So we'd often have a lot of companies going to country. This is before COVID, face to face. We do them virtually now, and getting lots of buyers along who'd like to speak to specific UK companies. We've got a fantastic reputation around the world, the education sector, which I'm sure all of your clients understand. I'm sure that all the tutoring companies on understand that. And that provides us with an in going overseas because they want to speak to UK educators. They want to have our advice. They want to do business with us. And when we bring them over in large groups, it can attract a lot of very enterprising companies and also people from government as well. It works very well, those trade missions. The other thing we do, I touched on it earlier, we work with a number of organizations that have different trade shows in place. And there is a trade show access program, which has been a bit on hold at the moment. But when things get back to normal, what it means is the government gives money to various trade organizations. And if they run an event, they can use that money to give a grant to a UK company if they want to have a stand at that event. And it's quite a useful way for companies to go overseas and get something subsidized. It's a little bit of a nudge, really. If they were thinking of having a stand at Guess in Dubai, then maybe if they get a small amount of funding towards it, it will be that little nudge that will help them to establish themselves at an event overseas. Apart from small amounts of funding and advice, the other thing we do lots of is training. So we have lots of masterclasses and webinars and lots of different events that are going on, which before COVID were great places for networking, but they're still great places for getting information. And you can actually go to our website, sign up for information, and get lots of things coming through to you on the education sector. One of the masterclasses we do is called Winning and Delivering Business Overseas. It's a great day-long course, which is an overview on doing business overseas for novices, and it's quite a good way of understanding the best way to start on your export journey. Right. The other thing is, if you're looking for other resources, there's a great website called Open to Export, which is about products and services, but it's a good way of finding information about doing business overseas. It started off in UK Trade and Investment, and now it's being run by the Institute of Export. And it's a good place to find information about doing business in different countries and selling services overseas. There's lots of information there. I don't know what's happening with the rooms, but I'll take you away, but we'll see. And the other thing is, I mentioned UK Export Finance. UK Export Finance is a government department that's there to ensure that if UK companies are doing business overseas and they can't get finance from their bank, UK Export Finance will try to work with their bank to provide government assistance to ensure they can get finance. And that works very, very well in terms of ensuring that deals that maybe couldn't have been done previously will be done going forward. Ludo, I'm not sure where the open all rooms bit came from.
Don't worry about that bit. That's a back end confusion.
Very interesting, but anyway, so that's an overview of the department and our services. Sorry if it was a bit dry, but we're the government. We're here to do specific things. In terms of, just trying to get to the next slide, actually. There we go. In terms of following up after this, I mentioned the great.gov.uk website. It's got a lot of information on there. You can access market guides about doing business in country. You can find the export opportunities that I was telling you about. There's advice on selling online overseas and also advice on finding a buyer overseas. Quite a lot of information on there, so please take a look at great.gov.uk afterwards. There's also the Department for International Trade website. It's great to see that vegetarian haggis is allowed in the US nowadays. If you look at www.gov.uk/DIT, you can find a lot more information about the department there, including on that website, you can find out where we've got offices around the world. And then I put my contact details on here. Ludo, I think the slides are going out afterwards, aren't they?
Yep, exactly.
Exactly. So we've got a LinkedIn account and Twitter, and my email address is up there if you'd like to get in contact. So, any questions?
This is your chance to ask Ian, who's here in front of you now. Any questions you have about taking your tutoring business abroad?
That was actually longer than normal. Sorry if I droned on too much.
There are a few extra anecdotes and stories there, Ian.
So, if I may have a question, Ian, which are the countries which you feel have more appetite to secure tuition from the UK?
That's an interesting question, actually, because I would put it in two different ways. Okay, I think there are countries and cultures that have more appetite for UK education, have more appetite for learning things virtually, or have natural reasons to be wanting to get tutoring services from the UK. So it could be a lot of countries that are sending their children to independent schools in the UK would be a target market with regards to it. So a lot of countries in the Middle East, China, and Southeast Asia would be countries in that sort of category. But what I would say is, it's interesting when you start analysing what your own strengths are as a company and what your own target market is. You might well find some ideas that you can use to try and work out what your market strategy would be. So I mentioned previously a company that targets Russian families in London and the Southeast, and they found that they were started to look at other places where a lot of Russian high net worth individuals are based, like Monaco and Cyprus. So my initial, a lot of the things that they were doing were very niche because they realized it worked very well, and it was a good way of utilizing a strategy that was quick and dirty. You could go into the market, do a bit of research, find out if it was a winner or not, and then leave a lot of social media marketing going on in there, monitor it going forward, etc., and try and find a partner in country. So it depends very much on what your market is. But I would suggest that culturally, a lot of people that are doing things like life skill courses are finding that in the US and in China, people are much more, well, there's a lot more families that are looking to get that sort of tutoring, but more importantly, people culturally are very used to doing things online. And therefore, it makes it easier if you've got a great online solution.
Thank you.
That was meant to be a short answer, but it turned into a long one. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, and so can I ask, it's a two-part question, because a year and a half ago, I was actually in sort of advanced stages of opening up in Australia, but because of pandemic that hit, I'm lucky enough where my family's been in sort of education, recruitment, secretarial, financial banking for the last 35 years. And it is something that we are looking to go forward with, but because of everything. So regarding certain areas, if they're not high net worth and you've got an English tutor, depending on where in the world that they are, the English tutor will want English money, but then depending on where you're marketing them to, English tutor or a teacher will be a lot more expensive than if there is someone already there on the ground, unless you're going to open up within those particular countries.
I would agree with that. Actually, I'd agree to a degree. Okay. I think the thing about it is there are some markets that are competitive. Okay, there are people. Hong Kong, for example, everyone thinks that everyone can speak English in Hong Kong, but they can't. You know, about 70% of the population can't speak English, or maybe even 80%. Sorry, that was a really aggressive figure I gave you there. But in terms of what that means is there are a lot of local tutoring companies in Hong Kong. So would you think of that as being too competitive a market to go for? Maybe, but maybe not, because the service that you're providing, people would be willing to pay for that service, because what you're providing is a service that is by fluent English speakers, that has a nuance about doing business in England and in Europe that you don't get from the organisations within country, or a nuance about the British education system that you don't get in country. So there might be a value about what you're doing that you need to understand before you start approaching target markets. And you know, I mentioned VIP Kids. I don't know if everyone had heard of VIP Kids. You probably have done. But effectively, their USP is the fact that most of their tutors are teachers in the States, but also around other English-speaking regions, where English is their first language. They're doing one-to-many, paying them quite a good hourly rate, which has actually recently just come down, and doing one-to-many, and they're making a lot of money out of it because they're doing it at a certain rate. So there are different ways of skinning the cat, as it were.
Yeah, I've got many ideas on that. I mean, we were in Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, but that was family, that was not mine. Whereas I've set up shop however many years ago, and I'm looking to follow a particular business model. So I would like to speak to you if possible.
That's great. Please drop me an email. That'd be great.
Will do. Thank you.
Ian, if I may, my market is international. I teach English as a second language, and will work at the moment primarily with senior business executives who need English for communication, and also for students who are going either to Canada, Australia, America under the IELTS scheme. And they also need it for visas for coming into the UK. The problem is what I need to do is expand that, and that's where I need help. I mean, I've been working this market for over 10 years, and it has changed drastically. And you're quite right, in China, in Hong Kong, everybody thinks they all speak English. They don't. And you will find an awful lot of the so-called indigenous English teachers can't speak English either. They know the grammar, they know the reading, they know the writing, but they can't speak English to save their lives. And that's the market I want to get into in a far bigger way.
Okay. And do you have a lot of tutors working for you?
At the moment, me. But
right, okay.
I'm looking at that other aspect as well, because
Yeah.
I've liaised with a lot of English-based native speaking English tutors who do the same as I do, and we've both all got the same problem, and this is the market that we want to concentrate on.
Well, I think definitely a good idea. I think what you need to do is get a network of associates in place, so ready to hit the ground running on that one. The thing about doing things internationally is, in terms of bang per buck, unless you're being a one-man band, unless you've got something specific that you're actually doing that's really, 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 really niche, it's very difficult for our department to help you. Whereas if you've got a lot of associates, it makes it much easier.
Yeah, well, that I'm working to develop this.
It's a good idea. A lot of people have been thinking about the situation in Hong Kong and also in lots of other countries which are developing links with the UK that we didn't expect previously.
I have a client who's a professor of law at Moscow University. My previous background is insurance, and a lot of that was international. And he invited me to as guest speaker on a seminar he was running for Russian lawyers working internationally, talking about business interruption insurance, and from a claims point of view, which was my background, and that developed quite well.
It's funny because I do business services, I also do a lot of work with recruitment companies and other business services like translation. And a lot of the translation companies that do brilliantly overseas are ones that are specialist technically, as in the people they've got working for them have got specialist technical knowledge, whether it be in insurance or legal, and it makes a massive difference having that niche. And with tutoring, even if you're doing tutoring in terms of, I don't know, English or maths or whatever it is, if you've got something that can define you against your competitors, it makes a massive difference overseas. Having something, I mean, being British is actually a very good definer, but if you just have something layered on top that really makes it you slightly different, it makes a massive difference.
Okay, thanks very much. Oh, one last question. Do you cover Northern Ireland, which is where I'm based?
There will be an office in Northern Ireland that will do that actually, and I can, if you drop me an email, I can give you the details of that office, or it could be on the great.gov.uk website.
Okay, thanks very much.
Hi there. I'm doing a lot of personal work on race, racism, colonialism, things like that, just for my own personal development. And I suppose the only thing that struck me, I might be going off on a complete tangent here, but when we're talking about going into somewhere like Hong Kong or China, and you've got people over there who are already the business there in China, in Hong Kong. I mean, this is a big issue for me because I've had lots of offers to work with people in China and Hong Kong. And my first thought is, yes, I'm a native speaker, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, I'm going to be the perfect opportunity. But I've seen a lot of discussion on LinkedIn about the ethical nature of doing this. And although it would be an easy win, are there ethical issues with selling yourself in that way rather than supporting people in those countries already doing that and maybe upskilling them rather than taking their business?
Well, I'm sure we could, over a few drinks, we could discuss that for a long time with regards to it. But what I would say is that the thing about it is that there is a reason that we have a government department to help British business overseas. We've got an economy to support over here, obviously, and we have a lot of companies that have services that can really make a difference overseas in lots of different respects. And what you'll often happen is, especially in China and Hong Kong, you will find that a British company will go over there, do something in a slightly different manner, And because the locals are so clever and innovative, they will steal part of the different ideas with regards to it, refine it, make it better, and start selling it to us.
Okay,
how
I
the
mean, I
world
know
works.
I'm a very naive person when it comes to business in this place, so I'm sure I have caused a few little chuckles, but I just wanted to raise it. So
That's okay. That's all right. I like it. Was great question, actually. It made me have to think very quickly. It's different from my normal stuff.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
You haven't got any high net worth clients that I could possibly get to for tutoring, whether they be Australian, Hong Kong, Dubai. I think that'd be an easier one. I like Russia as well.
To be frank, I mean, the high net worth individuals, that's difficult. How many times do I get companies and business services coming to me and say, could you introduce me to loads of high net worth individuals? So, for example, that overseas market introduction service I talked about previously, it doesn't really work for finding high net worth individuals. If there was an easy way to find high net worth individuals, everybody would be doing it very easily. And the reason they're not is because high net worth individuals are being sold to and bothered aggressively by lots of different people. And as a result, they're more difficult to get hold of. However, you might well have things in sort of what I would call strengths in your network that you don't really know about so much, or ways of making people realize what a great company you are that can enhance your profile overseas and give you more chance of doing things overseas.
We do that in training here.
High net worth individuals are difficult to find.
Well, 5 steps away from anyone, if you really see it. Yeah, so we do those type of training here, but no, there is definitely a loophole. There is definitely a gap there within the market for everyone on this call. You know, a friend of a friend knows someone that lives in Dubai or lives in Monaco or so on and so forth. I bet we all know a football player or two somewhere along the line that probably knows someone else, or rugby or whatever it may be. It's just how much we actually want to push it. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I mean that a lot of people I know have actually managed to get agents or partners in country, especially in the Middle East, who have great networks. And sometimes it might be because they start doing stuff with schools in country, develop a good relationship, and someone high up in the school can help them develop a relationship with some of the more prominent parents within that school's network, effectively. So there are ways of doing it, but none of them are easy. Sorry, to finish on such a positive note.
None of it is easy. That's a good place to finish. Well, if there are no further questions, and as Ian has pointed out many times, there are many ways to get in touch with both the Department of International Trade and Ian, of course, and I will pop in the chat now all of the ways that within the Festival Hub you can get in touch with Ian, including his email address and the DIT's website. But really, for now, I think we would like to say a huge thank you to Ian for joining us and for giving up his preparations for this weekend's trip to Dorset to speak to you guys. I'm also just popping in the chat the survey that we would love all festival attendees to complete, so that we can get to know a little bit more about specifically what international tutoring looks like around the world, which is exactly what Ian has been here to talk to you about today. So give us, only takes about 6 or 7 minutes, that survey. So please do click on that now. Just keep it up on your screen. Welcome to complete it sort of now or a little later. But for one final time, thank you very much, Ian.
Thank you, Ludo, for giving me the opportunity. Very enjoyable and some great questions, by the way. Thank you.
I'm sure there'll be many people in touch. So goodbye, Ian. And
Cheers.
what's coming up next is the Tutors Marketplace.